Most modern wars are fought over political disagreements, which are pretty shallow. Ideological battles. What kind of government are we going to have? Capitalism called communism, or communism called capitalism? Or what have you? Those wars are fought out of fear. So we say, all right, we're going to blow those bastards to pieces. We're afraid of them. We don't want anything to do with them. We'd like to just get rid of them. Yeah, but if that is your motivation and this is your spirit, that you're frightened of the enemy, you're not going to be a good soldier. A good soldier is supposed to be courageous. See? You're not supposed to be afraid. So, all right, say, well, okay, we're not frightened of these people. We just think that they've been exploiting everybody else, and we are the knight on a white horse with a lance, and we're going to rescue everybody. Okay? In you go. And you stir up the same kind of problems. Everybody says to the knight on the white horse, gee, aren't you a stuffed shirt? You think you're holier than everybody else. You offend us by your righteousness. You're disgusting. You're not even human. And after all, you're a hypocrite. Because you may come on politically with this white horse, but you have all kinds of rackets back home, and you know. Still, you're courageous. You've won all that courage. You're not afraid of death and all that. So if you're not afraid of death and all that, the question comes up again. Why fight? What's the point? Who are you protecting? Are you going to teach your children to be afraid? And say, I'll protect my children because they've been taught to be afraid. I'm the father. I've learned not to be afraid. Why didn't I teach my children not to be afraid? If I had, I wouldn't have had to defend them. Because they would have said, it's just an illusion, and we can dissolve out of this body and appear somewhere else. Because if that is what happens, and it's pretty obvious that it is, I mean, when I say you'll appear somewhere else, everybody who appears is you. Only you can only experience it one at a time. But everybody only experiences themselves in the singular. But everybody's you, everybody's I, that's our name. We all share that. So there's nothing to worry about in that sense. But if you know that in your heart of hearts, obviously the only strategy that is worth anything at all is not to chop everything up, but to love everybody.
It's easier to hate than to love. Hello to you all. You're watching RHTVLive. And of course, we talk politics and geopolitics. And first of all, we're going to take a look at what's happening in and around the Middle East, right? We have U.S. air bases in Qatar basically being bombed, and we're going to show some video of that. But first, we're going to show where the beautiful city of Maastricht is. It's in the south of the Netherlands, and we are streaming live from the beautiful city of Maastricht. So let's talk what's happening in Qatar, right? We have Iranian bombs at a U.S. airbase in Qatar. Fascinating images, right? We're going to take a look at those pretty soon. And yeah, get your popcorn, because this is going to be a long broadcast. So here we go. Iran Observer, scenes above Qatar. And we're going to enlarge that and take a look.
Allahu Akbar. Madam, madam.
So people in Qatar are hiding out, right? And yeah, let's hope this will not escalate into more war, even though, you know, there are lots of bases in and around the Middle East, right? So this is all happening as we speak. Trump will respond to this. Who knows what will happen? We don't know if there are Americans wounded or what. This is pretty recent, so we will see the response. But first, we're going to take a look at Al Jazeera and see what they have to say about the bombing of a U.S. base in Qatar. So here we go. U.S.-Iran escalation flares over Qatar's capital amid threat of attack on U.S. bases. So there we go. Let's see what these people have to say.
Okay, we're going to bring you more now on our breaking news, the loud explosions that have been heard over the Qatari capital, Doha, in the past 30 minutes. Let's go to Ali Hashim. He's in the Iranian capital, Tehran, because we're seeing, Ali, Tasnim news agency saying that an operation called Annunciation of Victory has begun against U.S. air bases in Qatar and indeed...
Ah, come on.
In Iraq. What more can you tell us?
Well, it seems that this is the beginning of an Iranian retaliation towards American bases in the Gulf. We've heard and saw pictures from Qatar. Also, there are reports from Iraq. Now there are reports of sirens in Bahrain. So it seems these missile launches are targeting several bases around the Gulf.
So for all you viewers out there who don't really know how the Middle East looks like, we're going to show it on the map, and you'll have a better overview of what's happening here. So let's go to the Middle East. Over here we have Iran, Kuwait, Qatar, and other Gulf states. You know, so Iran is basically targeting Qatar and also Iraq, as we've heard, right? So we also have Bahrain. Saudi Arabia also has a big U.S. base, one of the biggest in the region. You know, so lots of U.S. bases surrounding Iran. We also have in Afghanistan some U.S. bases, even though it's in the hands of the Taliban now. We also have U.S. bases in Jordan and elsewhere around Iran. You know, they're surrounded basically by U.S. bases. So Qatar was attacked, Iraq, and many other places where Iran, you know, just shot willingly, right? And who can blame them? Huh? Saddam Hussein was a bad man, yeah, we know, but he did not support Al Qaeda, right? So attacking Iraq because of the support of Al Qaeda, that was one big lie, right? We know. We even have Mark Dice explaining lots of stuff, right? And of course, we're going to show him too, because he also made a video of the whole targeting of Iran. So here we go. The Trump betray MAGA with Iran strike. Here's what really is going on. So let's take a look at this here. Mark Dice over there in California.
Of course, you heard President Trump bombed Iran over the weekend for Israel, but you don't tune into this channel to get breaking news. You come here to get analysis, the full context of what is happening and why. So let's take a deep dive into this situation. A lot of people are upset, both on the right and on the left, screaming that President Trump just started World War III. And a lot of people on the MAGA side, understandably very upset that President Trump has involved us in another one of Israel's problems. And that needs to be said because that is what's going on. But if you're a clown working for the New York Times, you're upset that Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth referred to the B-2 pilots as our boys on those bombers. Yet both men and women have trained to fly them. And I saw some claims, I haven't verified it, that there might have been a female pilot on board, or at least a female member of the crew on one of those B-2 bombers, which, if it is true, is a terrible mistake because she obviously should be back at the base making the boys some sandwiches. Some of the more mild-mannered MAGA people saw this and hoped that this was just a one and done. Basically a drive-by. President Trump assisting Israel in their plan to deal with their primary enemy over there in the Middle East, as always, having to use us to do their dirty work. But then yesterday, President Trump ruffled a lot more feathers, saying this on Truth Social: it's not politically correct to use the term regime change, but if the current Iranian regime is unable to make Iran great again, why wouldn't there be a regime change? MAGA, make Iran great again. And so now tons of MAGA folks are completely outraged. But I think that they are wrong into this. This is President Trump just trolling the regime over there and using this as more leverage to then come to the negotiation table to negotiate a peace deal. He knows very well what happened to President Bush's legacy. President Bush gave Saddam Hussein 48 hours to step down from power, or then he would institute the full invasion over there. So, major distinction between an invasion, boots on the ground, and dropping a couple of bombs as the B-2 bombers fly over in the night. And again, still not supporting our involvement over there. That's very clear where I stand on that. But to compare the two...
Well, Mark, if the Qatari base has, like, Americans dead, would you still, have your stance, right? You guys need to get out of there. Go away, right? Go back home. Go back to the United States. Give all those military bases, accept your loss, right? Because the U.S. empire is falling apart. So, yeah, let's just hope Mark will stay consequent, and even when there are Americans dead because of the actions in Qatar and elsewhere in the Middle East, let's keep our heads cool, right? You guys did not need to participate in this, and yeah, it's going to be a long ride.
At least at this point, hopefully this will remain the case, is, well, quite frankly, ridiculous. Out of all of the angry tweets that people posted over the weekend on both the left and on the right, many MAGA on the right will ultimately go back and delete all those tweets and pretend that they never said such things and that they were always on board with President Trump. If this thing smooths over, and this is the only involvement that we have, and things settle down over there, which hopefully they will, I'm not one of these doomsdayers who's always fearing the worst and think that World War III is just around the corner. I've seen so many boys who cry wolf in this movement and online over my real 20-year career. It's sad, quite frankly. But this person sums up the situation better than everyone when he said there's a 100% chance that none of us know what the actual F is really going on. That especially...
No, we can only guess, right? There are like back channels in the White House, and we know about that, right? We know about the White House talking to Russia and to Iran. You know, there was supposed to be a deal with Iran, right? Which Israel said, nope, we're not going to do that. Nope, nope. And it's very interesting to see this war escalate, basically. It was not needed, right? Israel did not need to attack Iran. For 30 years, Benjamin Netanyahu was saying Iran will get a nuke, and they never got a nuke. You know, so this is all paranoia coming from Netanyahu and his war cabinet, right? They see enemies everywhere.
It includes Mark Levin, who has probably been making sweet love to Lindsey Graham, celebrating this attack, who said this on Fox News over the weekend.
America, don't you feel relief? Of course you feel relief.
We're supposed to be relieved. Is that why the government issued a warning on heightened threats from Iran? The Department of Homeland Security issued an advisory warning.
Yep, get the hell out of the Middle East. You know, you guys are targets. Iran had said this, stated it publicly. Americans are targets now. Now that America targeted us, right? You know, so you guys are targets. Get the hell out of the Middle East. Get the hell out of Iraq and Jordan and all these other countries. Get out of there, right? The only thing you need to do for the Middle East is make an agreement with Russia, right? Now, what would that agreement be? Well, America will stay and protect Israel, whilst Russia gets the West Bank and the Gaza Strip, right? They're protectorate over Palestine. You see, the imbalance is there when one state has a sponsor with ultra-modern weapons and another state has no sponsor, no weapons, and, you know, have no way to defend themselves except for sticks and stones. Right? They need a protectorate. Now, Iran is basically the protectorate of the West Bank and the Gaza Strip, but Israel does not like Iran. You know, so that is dangerous. This is also one of the many layers of reasons why Israel was attacking Iran. You know, you also have Hezbollah, which is also linked with Iran. You also have the Houthis and Hamas, also linked with Iran. Even though Israel created Hamas, right? They created the monster, and someone else took over the monster and gave it support and let it fester and grow and stuff like that. So this is all happening, right? And we need to stop this. We need to come with solutions, right? So my solution would be give the West Bank and the Gaza Strip to Russia as a protectorate, because Russia was also involved with Sykes-Picot. You had three countries basically ruling over former Palestine. You had England, right, which was the last country to give Palestine away. You had France. They were carving up the Middle East. So you had France and you had Russia. And Russia said, nope, we're going to leave. Bye. Bye. So it was between France and England. And France said, yeah, we don't have the money for that. So England stayed a protectorate of Palestine, right? Until the Balfour Declaration and stuff like that. The Zionist movement. We know the whole history of the Middle East, right? And we want peace. That is what we want, right? We don't want any more war. For 80 years, it's been war over there. Even longer if you count all the empires and stuff like that, But for 80 years, since the funding of Israel itself, it's been war. There have been peace accords, this and that, but one side says, nope, we're not going to deal with that. And the other side said, nope, we're not going to deal with that. There's a very interesting debate, which we're going to show pretty soon. But first, we're going to get back to Mark Dice.
Americans all around the world that Iran and their proxies could retaliate with any number of terrorist attacks. But yeah, we're relieved. J.D. Vance did acknowledge this possibility, and again, I emphasize possibility. You may recall a lot of men freaked out when President Trump ordered the drone strike on the Iranian general Soleimani back in 2020, thinking that would spark World War III, and all forgot about it literally the following week, probably 3 days later. And those same people completely freaked out when President Trump bombed an airbase shortly after taking office. I'm not saying this isn't going to escalate, but let's try to not be paranoid about things, shall we? But here's J.D. Vance having a level-headed response about the possibility for some retaliations.
What we're prepared for is if they attack us in a maximal direction, first of all, we've got maximum defensive. We're going to be able to defend as many of our people as possible. And of course, I'd encourage Americans to pray for our guys in the Middle East.
Now, they wouldn't hit us here unless it's some rogue, lone wolf, supposed sleeper cell. But if they had sleeper cells here, and I've seen a lot of people warning about them, be on the lookout, be vigilant, stay armed. Okay, if they had sleeper cells here, they most likely would have been activated immediately after the attack. That would have been the trigger. They would have been here and been prepared because they know that something like this has been in the works for a long time. And so probably aren't even here. That's not to say that we haven't been infested with a bunch of radical Muslim terrorist sympathizers, of course, thanks to the, both the Republican and the Democrat. It's just allowing anyone and everyone to flood into our country, including those who literally hate our country. So these individual lone wolf attacks definitely are possible, getting inspired from the situation, but as part of a larger coordinated network and a plan, very unlikely.
Well, Mark is talking about attacks within the United States, right? I guess, because we saw missiles go over Qatar. We saw the retaliatory response of Iran. So let's just hope that there are Americans alive, not dead or wounded, because you don't want to be involved in overthrowing Iran, right? You guys made a mess of Afghanistan. The primary reason to invade Afghanistan was to remove the Taliban. Now, who's in power after 20 years of occupation? Who is in power in Afghanistan? It's the Taliban, right? One of the main reasons of attacking Iraq was to diminish influence within Iraq of Iran. Right? The Iranian influence in Iraq was quite big, even under Saddam. And, that was one of the reasons why Saddam was toppled, right? So, and with the power vacuum, Iran got even more influence in Iraq. This is why Soleimani, the general that was assassinated, had a cooperation with the other general, what's his name, in Iraq, right? So the ties of Iran and Iraq are closer because of the intervention in Iraq. If you kept Saddam there, right, then the whole relationship would be different. No power vacuum next to Iran, and but that's an alternative history, right?
You see some people posting in the comments now, Mark must have got the call from the Jews. That's why he's saying these things. This is a nuanced and in-depth analysis that some people just don't have the intellectual capacity to understand. They see the world as either black or white. It's all one way or all the other. They really just can't understand the complexities of these kinds of situations. Republican Congressman Thomas Massie from Kentucky has personally upset President Trump because he is voicing his concern about this attack and not bending over and kissing the feet of Israel.
And the notion that this isn't an act of war, I find ludicrous. This is a hot war. There are two nations, Israel and Iran, trading volleys of missiles every night, every day, and we're co-belligerent now in this war.
Yes, we are, and that's the reasonable take to have, to be concerned, to be upset, to be let down, to hold President Trump accountable for bending over to the interests of a foreign country, one that Ben Shapiro and others assured us would be able to take care of themselves.
They say that I want America to fight wars for Israel. Nope. First of all, Israel can take care of herself.
Except everybody knew that they couldn't because they didn't have the physical capabilities to take out those underground nuclear facilities, because only we can with the B-2 bomber and those bunker buster bombs that Trump just ordered dropped over there on Saturday. Former Congressman Matt Gaetz, who now hosts a show over on OAN, has had some of the best take on the situation and is gaining me not just a lot of respect for him, but also for OAN, which I've always thought is fantastic. But the fact that they are allowing him to say such things on air over there shows that they are not or may not be as or at all controlled by the same kinds of influences that tend to dominate the other media companies.
Israel didn't kick their regime change habit with Iraq or Libya or Syria, it seems. They need another fix. But Matt, this isn't a regime change war. It's about Iran's nuclear program. I wish that were true, but it's not. Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene opined that maybe Netanyahu is so feisty about regime change in Iran because he was facing regime change in Israel.
It's not being reported enough that on Thursday, they held a vote in the Knesset, and it was only by 2 votes that Netanyahu won. If he had lost, they would have had another election in Israel, and the polling shows that he would lose if an election were to occur today. That vote happened last Thursday. And then Friday, Israel attacked Iran. That's why the bombs are falling.
Very insightful analysis coming from a guy who got the intelligence briefings when he was in Congress, so he would know. Compare that to this clown show, a YouTube channel, a media company started by former MSNBC host, whatever this clown's name is. I didn't waste 2 brain cells even remembering, having his guest on to give his analysis.
Immediate reaction to this. Did you see this coming?
My immediate reaction to this is that Donald Trump has guaranteed that Iran will be a nuclear weapon state in 5 to 10 years from now.
Now it's going to happen even quicker. Even though Benjamin Netanyahu has been saying for like 30 years that in 2 years he's going to have the capability. But now, because Donald Trump upset them by destroying most of their nuclear facilities, now it's going to happen faster. And if you don't...
So, Mark is not lying, right? We show you the video of Netanyahu for 30 years singing the same song, right? You know, Iran is going to have nuclear weapons. Within 2 to 3 months, they're going to have nuclear weapons. Nuclear weapons. For 30 years, we've been hearing the same thing, right? The same nonsense that you know, everyone falls for, right? Because, oh, Israel has the right to defend itself. I'm not for Israel. I'm not for Palestine. I am for peace. I don't care whether you're Israeli or Palestinian, right? No one deserves to die under the pretense of war, right? That is bad. You need to negotiate on stuff, what's happening, basically. So Mark had said for 30 years, Benjamin Netanyahu has been saying this. And yeah, we found it. Here we go. Benjamin Netanyahu, 2025, right? Let's expand this here. And let's take a look.
Not stopped. Iran could produce a nuclear weapon in a very short time. It could be a year, it could be within a few months.
They have the wherewithal, the stored up, preserved knowledge to make a bomb very quickly if they wanted to do it.
Iran is so dangerous. Weeks away from having the fissile material for an entire arsenal of nuclear bombs.
They're very close. They're 6 months away from being about 90% of having the enriched uranium for an atom bomb.
Iran is gearing up to produce 25 bombs, atomic bombs a year, 250 bombs in a decade.
Ladies and gentlemen, time is running out.
Iran will be capable of producing alone, without importing anything, nuclear bombs within 3 to 5 years.
Not stopped. Iran could produce a nuclear weapon in a very short time.
So we just showed you Benjamin Netanyahu saying for 30 years, within 6 months, Iran will have a nuclear weapon. Now, I'm not a genius, but I think within 30 years, you can build an atomic weapon, right? Now, Pakistan and India, which are neighboring countries of Iran, you also have Afghanistan as a neighboring country, right? They have nuclear bombs, right? They're not in the Middle Eastern region. That's the South Asian region, right? So, yeah, and they have nuclear bombs. I don't hear Benjamin Netanyahu complaining about that, right? So let's get back to Mark.
I'm not afraid to criticize our own team. I am a media analyst, a media critic. And like a film critic, I tell you the good, the bad, and the ugly. A lot of people in this business are just cheerleaders. They don't want to offend anybody because they want to share audiences. They want to go on their podcast. Everybody in this business has such a big ego. If you tend to just disagree with something that they say, or if you disagree with something a little bit too harshly.
You see, I don't care. My channel is not monetized, right? I'm not doing this for money. I'm doing this for peace, for a future of humanity. We're doing this for peace, right? I don't need money. I need peace.
Then they'll never have you on their show. They'll never retweet you. They'll never give you a shout out. They'll never cover your content. I obviously don't care. And so that's why I can mock and ridicule posts like this from Millie Weaver, who's done some great work. She used to work for InfoWars. She's getting a little paranoid, though. I just ordered potassium iodide tablets. That's what people take because they think it's going to prevent the thyroid from, absorbing the nuclear radiation in a nuclear war. Hopefully they'll arrive before the nukes start dropping. This is the kind of paranoia that I'm talking about. Don't be like this. Okay, now on to the memes. As I said, the left, as we all know, the left can't meme. The left are memes. And so these are memes from people on the right who are very upset with President Trump for getting us involved over there, calling him Bush Light, the logo from Bush Beer. This average Joe Mega switching his hat from no new wars to bombs away, selling attack. Oh, they get even better. Get a load of this. This is a scene from the original made-for-TV movie It. There's Pennywise, the clown, down there in the sewer as he's luring Georgie in. His first kill, saying, I have another war down here, luring President Trump into the sewer. This is another great one. This is the Trump administration according to libtards, and then Trump's administration in reality. This may be the most insane one of all. This from Rabbi Shmuley. He's that just total whack job who sells sex toys with his daughter, a rabbi who celebrates Pride Month. Of course, well, I better not say it. But he posted this meme calling Tucker Carlson a Holocaust denier, and that's Mark Levin there KOing him. Tucker, of course, being vehemently opposed to any of our involvement over there. And Laura Loomer is now more in love with President Trump than ever before. Laura Loomer, a proud Jew and major Zionist, posted, Donald Trump is going down in history as the most influential president in history. There is no one greater. Shame on those who call him a warmonger. He just saved us all from a nuclear holocaust. God bless him. All of us he saved. This is especially hilarious when you see what she was posting before President Trump, became an interventionalist over there in the Middle East, when she slammed Nikki Haley, saying that Nikki Haley went on CNBC and called for the U.S. to bomb Iran. Nikki Haley wants more war in the Middle East, which means more dead U.S. soldiers. The only person who has proven that he won't create more wars is Donald Trump. Donald Trump is the pro-peace candidate. So there she was, just back in January of last year, slamming Nikki Haley for calling on us to bomb Iran, and yesterday celebrating President Trump for doing just that. And I apologize if I'm...
I apologize, but lots of Americans are just political idiots, right? They have no sense of politics. We are superior. We are the Pax Americana Empire. Yeah, you got to listen to us. Whilst you have no knowledge of foreign politics. We saw Ted Cruz with Tucker Carlson. Tucker just asked something that you can look up on a tablet or on your phone. What is the population of Iran? And Tucker Carlson said, I don't know. So you don't know the population of Iran, yet you are willing to attack Iran. It's like, what the hell, man? And this is a plan, right? The clean break a new strategy for securing the realm. This was prior to 9/11, right? And Netanyahu signed this. The U.S. signed it, of course, and other countries. So Mark Dice is going to talk about this here, a clean break.
Repeating myself, not everybody watches every video, so there are some very important little known facts that people really need to know in order to understand what it is that's going on. So just briefly, I'll mention the Clean Break Plan, which was a document published in 1996, put together by a bunch of neocons, along with Benjamin Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel, which outlined the need to solve Israel's security problems, which then also included the removal of Saddam Hussein from power in Iraq. Okay, I mean, that is why we went into Iraq after 9/11. Okay, it wasn't to stop Saddam from attacking us. It was to, once again, do Israel's dirty work. I'm sorry, to protect Israel. And while you're not supposed to admit that, because that opens up a gigantic can of worms.
This guy, Ted Cruz, he's an idiot. I don't understand why such an idiot is in U.S. politics. You see, we're in the state right now that we're in because of these idiots, because of these Ted Cruz and all these other idiots in Congress. We don't even know about a certain density of a population in a country. And they don't care. The first thing that the U.S. did when they attacked Iraq was absolve the Ba'ath Party, right? And everyone in Iraq worked for the Ba'ath Party. So, you know, millions of people on the streets. We don't have a political party anymore, you know, and this is why America was not seen as the liberator of Iraq, right? So without even knowing, you guys created even more destabilization.
Terms about certain kinds of influence within our government over our foreign policy, which is deemed anti-Semitic to even think about such things or notice such things. That is at least an argument that people have.
Anti-Semitic, okay. They say, right, that Hamas and all these other terrorist groups, that they're, you know, using human shields. Now, the Minister of Interior in Israel had said, you're not allowed to go out of Israel. You need to stay in Israel. Well, why would that be? Huh? Even though millions of Israeli settlers had fled the country. I think about 2 million, right? 1.8 million or something. So they fled the country. And now there's a population that still is in Israel, and they need to stay. It's really, really gross. So let's take a look at Richard Medhurst, who's a specialist of the Middle East, you know, English, Syrian, as far as I know, and he has a good analysis on what's happening in the Middle East and Israel and stuff. So let's take a look at this guy here.
About, or rather from the Israelis, saying that Palestinians use their own people, right? How many times have we heard that? Let me show you the new policy in Israel. So apparently Israel from leaving. Why? Well, we'll get into that, but here's, you can hear directly from the Transportation Minister, מירי רגב.
חשוב לי להבהיר, אנחנו לא נאשר יציאות של ישראלים לחול בשלב זה. מי שיוצא לחול הם אותם אנשים שהגיעו לבקר בארץ, אם זה תיירים, אם זה תגלית או דיפלומטים, שיחזרו לארציהם, אבל הם לא אמורים לחזור לארץ בקרוב. חשוב לי להבהיר.
Yeah, and this is confirmed, right? You can see here in Haaretz, Israel prohibits airlines from letting Israeli citizens leave. Okay, here, forgive me, I'll just move that aside. Yeah, so even once repatriation flights begin. So they say the directive is meant to prevent overcrowding at Ben Gurion Airport. That's the main international airport. Of course, Palestinians are not allowed to have airports. They shut them down. So, you know, there's been a multitude of reactions to this. A multitude. One reaction that I saw was that you had someone with 4 passports. Yeah, really, like with and then someone commented on that, like, well, why do you have so many passports? And then Israelis kind of just doubled down and said, well, you're just jealous. Why am I raising this? Well, not all Israelis have multiple. Many of them do. And, you know, I can just give you an example. When I did a report, for example, on the Olympic team, I counted a lot of dual citizens, a lot. And you know, all Nazi, so like European, Eastern European, not Semitic. And, you know, the point being that, well, if Zionism is a settler colonial issue, meaning these are settlers, they're colonizers, they've come to steal the land, to exploit it, to live on it, then, you know, you could, people raise the obvious solution to that, well, just go home, right? Then there wouldn't be a conflict, right? It's not the same thing as being anti-immigrant, because immigrants come legally to the country, right? But the settler colonialism is obviously not legal. You know, there are numerous United Nations General Assembly resolutions against it. You know, many countries actually after World War II gained their independence as the result of anti-colonial movements. Unfortunately, Palestine you know, fell in the opposite fate. Now, you can see here basically that you know, just Israelis are leaving by boat now because they cannot get out via the airport. As you saw the transportation minister saying that it's only allowed to leave. You're only allowed to leave. It's only permitted if you're a diplomat or a tourist. And so that's why people are pulling out their other passports, you know, from Poland or Mexico or whatever. And Mike Huckabee, actually, the U.S. ambassador to Israel, suggested the other day on Twitter that you have 700,000 Americans in Israel. 700,000. I thought it was 200,000. I couldn't find any information supporting his claim. I mean, 200,000 is already quite considerable, but, you know, I'll take him at his words. The ambassador, he should know. I mean, ambassadors don't typically deal with consular services. That's the consul, but nevertheless, I'm assuming that figure was stated for a reason. And my point being that is nuts. That is really nuts, you know, especially if Israel is such a tiny country or entity. Well, you know, I mean, Americans already are colonizers. What are they doing in the second colony, right? It's a bit selfish because you've seen many Israeli politicians, the cabinet themselves, coming out and saying we want to repatriate, meaning ethnically cleanse Palestinians and kick them out of their land in Gaza so we can take it over with Jewish settlements. And they've had conferences about this. This is all, you know, these are all public facts that can be, facts that can be publicly verified. So, you know, it's a bit selfish to steal someone's land in the first place, but especially when you can actually just leave, you know, easily at any time. And Palestinians, on the other hand, don't have airports, as I pointed out. They cannot leave by sea from Gaza because they're under siege. They're under blockade since 2007, with Egypt's help, I should add. And of course, you know, they cannot leave through the land crossings either. Even the United Nations and aid organizations can barely get into Gaza to help. Never mind Gazans leave. I mean, there was a short period where you could, but, you know, you had to sell a kidney basically to afford it. So, you know, it's not an option. It's not an option. You're besieged. And the only way you can leave, as the Israelis have publicly announced, and this was also confirmed early on after the genocide began by the security ministry in Israel, that, you know, they want to pay people to leave. So you can leave Gaza at some point in the future if you don't end up being killed first by Israel. If you take a bribe and you know, basically concede and forsake your own land, which is probably worth you know, or priceless basically. You know, so yeah, I think that is important. But going back to the main issue, which is the human shields, right? Which we've heard so many times. You know, every time Israel is asked to explain the ratio, the mountain of corpses that have piled up as a result of their so-called defensive action, they always come back to these same arguments. Well, there was a military post there, you know, they used it as a compound, as a military compound. The hospital was being used as a military compound. They use their own people as human shields. They like martyrdom. They're obsessed with death, whatever, you know, racist or xenophobic or Islamophobic comment they have to put out, they will do it. So, you know, it begs the question. It begs the question. Were they lying, and are they being hypocrites? I think the answer might be a yes, right? It certainly seems that way. And here you can see another confirmation that only, I don't know if you can see that. Yeah, only diplomats and tourists are allowed to leave. Well, you know, why are they doing that? Why are they doing that? The answer is that they need the colony to stay alive, and you already have a lot of Israelis that left prior. You know, you had, I think, already in November 2023, you had 500,000 Israelis who had left. 500,000. Those are, again, official figures from Haaretz or Times of Israel. It was one of the Israeli outlets. I think it was Haaretz. Okay, you can go and check it. I'm certain of it. And, you know, you're seeing Israelis basically leave like this now. They're taking buses to Sharm el-Sheikh in Egypt or Cairo, whatever, and then kind of just leaving by plane via Cairo, which is interesting because if you are one of the people who tried to participate in the march for Gaza in Egypt, you know, going from Cairo to Rafah, you're not allowed to do that, right? Isn't that funny? You had activists, journalists, you know, human beings who just don't like genocide coming from all over the planet to participate, and they had their passports taken from them. They were blocked by the police, by the security services, by the Mukhabarat, and told to fuck off, basically. You know, because solidarity with other Arabs is apparently not in. But if you're an Israeli and you want to leave via land, via Egypt, Egypt is wide open. Go ahead. Isn't that funny? Isn't that interesting? You know, how complacent and how subservient Egypt is. It's very, very. It's a far cry from Nasser's Egypt, right? I think we can all agree on that. So you have clips like this.
Oh, that's why Nasser was assassinated.
You know, where you have Israeli settlers, European, Polish, whatever. You know, just like basically getting on board these buses in Tel Aviv, and then going to the Sinai Desert in Egypt, which is, by the way, where they want to dump Palestinians like boxes or cargo or something. Like, they're not human beings. That's part of their ethnic cleansing later. And yeah, apparently the Polish embassy led this particular endeavor that I'm about to show you on video.
So all these people are allowed to leave overland on the bus and stuff like that. They're allowed to leave because there's a war situation. But people in Gaza cannot leave. They cannot leave by sea. They cannot leave by land. They cannot cross the border to Egypt. Rafah is basically one city divided into two. You have the Palestinian side and the Egyptian side. So, yeah, they cannot cross there. They're boxed in. They cannot go anywhere. These are human beings, right? Even though these people over here, they don't see the people in Palestine, they see them as cockroaches. They need to be destroyed because I feel unsafe with a Palestinian right at my border that I just took in. These are the issues that are on table, right? And we need to resolve this. How do we resolve this? Well, I was watching a debate of AI, right? Artificial intelligence, and it's about the Israel-Palestine issue. And how can AI resolve this? Well, let's take a look at this. The fifth question, which is...
Finally, we asked the debate participants, setting ideals aside, what is Israel's actual practical plan for dealing with the Israel-Palestine issue?
Israel's practical plan for the future is clear: creating economic peace and managing the conflict instead of immediately solving it. We know that a comprehensive agreement isn't possible under current conditions, so our strategy has several stages. First, strengthening the Abraham Accords and expanding peace with more Arab countries. Second, managing the Gaza situation using moderate Arab countries and limited reconstruction. Third, increasing Palestinian economic autonomy in the West Bank without immediately evacuating settlements. Fourth, maintaining security control over borders and the Jordan Valley. Fifth, stopping construction of new settlements in deep West Bank areas. This plan may not be ideal, but it's realistic. In conditions where Hamas controls half the Palestinians and wants our destruction, we have no other way.
You see, AI does not know that Hamas was created by Israel. I'm not making this up, right? We have Ron Paul, who basically said it in Congress, right? So we're also going to show that in a bit. So here we have Ron Paul, Israel created Hamas. Now, as I've said before, they made the monster, and the monster was fed by the enemy, which is Iran. So let's take a look at this here.
Paul. The gentleman is recognized for 2 minutes.
Gentlelady for yielding, and I ask unanimous consent to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection.
Madam Speaker, I rise in opposition to this resolution, not because I am taking sides and picking who the bad guys are and who the good guys are, but I'm looking at this more from the angle of being a United States citizen, an American. And I think resolutions like this really do us great harm. In many ways, what's happening in the Middle East, and in particular with Gaza right now, we have some moral responsibility for both sides in a way, because we provide help and funding for both Arab nations and Israel. And so we definitely have a moral responsibility, and especially now today, the weapons being used to kill so many Palestinians are American weapons, and American funds essentially are being used for this. But there's a political liability which I think is something that we fail to look at, because too often there's so much blowback from in areas that we shouldn't be involved in. You know, Hamas, if you look at the history, you'll find out that Hamas was encouraged and really started by Israel, because they wanted Hamas to counteract Yasser Arafat. And you say, well, yeah, that was better then and served its purpose, but we didn't want Hamas to do this. So then we as Americans say, well, we have such a good system, we're going to impose this on the world. We're going to invade Iraq and teach people how to be Democrats. We want free elections. So we encourage the Palestinians to have a free election. They do, and they elect Hamas. So we first indirectly and directly through Israel help establish Hamas. Then we have election. Then Hamas becomes dominant, so we have to kill them. You know, it just doesn't make sense. During the 80s, you know, we were allied with Osama bin Laden. And we were contending with the Soviets. It was at that time our CIA thought it was good if we radicalized the Muslim world. So we...
He's basically talking about the Mujahideen, you know, that fell apart after they said, bye Russia, bye, you know, Russia went away from Iraq. They lost the war. Not Iraq, Afghanistan. They lost the war, and you know they left. So the Mujahideen fell apart. Right? You had three opposing groups. You had the Northern Alliance, which is still basically in working. Right? You had the Taliban, who's in power, and you have Al Qaeda. Now, who did 9/11? Who was it that did 9/11? This is all because of U.S. foreign policy fuck-ups. So the AI does not know that Israel created Hamas, right?
Our practical plan under current conditions is multi-staged. First, national unity between Fatah and Hamas, which efforts are underway for. Without internal unity, we can't be strong. Second, strengthening civil resistance and international campaigns like BDS to increase occupation costs for Israel. Third, extensive diplomatic efforts to recognize the State of Palestine in international organizations and increase legal pressure through International Criminal Court. Fourth, focusing on improving economic conditions and strengthening state institutions in autonomous areas to prepare infrastructure for an independent state. Fifth, gaining support from emerging powers like China. We know it's a difficult path, but we believe international pressure will ultimately force Israel to accept a just solution.
What did I say? Right? Have an external power as protectorate over the Palestinian region, right? Over the West Bank and over the Gaza Strip, right? Have a protectorate. And Iran is a protectorate, but, you know, it's not really working out. So Iran needs to leave the stage and give it to Russia, right? Because Russia was also involved during the carving up of the Ottoman Empire. Yeah? They also had a certain say within the Palestinian region, you know? So give it to Russia, have Russia be a protectorate of the West Bank, and make new settlements for the Palestinians, right? You know, expand the West Bank into Israel and give some land back, you know, give and take, and then you can have a solution. And when that solution is on the table, Iran will not bomb Israel, right? There's less chance of Iran having conflict with Israel because, as I've said, right, the Palestinians have no protectorate. The scale of balance is out of balance, right? You have the United States protecting Israel and the Palestinians throwing with rocks and stones and sticks, and you know, so that's not working out. So please, Donald Trump, Vladimir Putin, Vladimir Zelensky, I know you guys are listening at RHTVLive. I know you guys are listening. Stop these wars, man. Stop it. All right? Be an adult and stop the wars. We don't need any more wars. We need more peace. Right? That is what we need. Peace, not war. So there are many more issues on table, right? We have Taiwan, which China wants to take over, basically. We also have Pakistan backing Iran within the conflict of Israel-Iran, right? So you have one backer here. You have China backing Iran. You have North Korea backing Iran. And you have Russia backing Iran. So the lines are drawn, right? India is more aligned with Israel. This is also a reason why the India-Pakistan war was emerging, right? Aligning differences and stuff. So, yeah, and there's so much more to tell. Let's see how our favorite country, Haiti, is doing, right? Let's see if we can find some news on Haiti, because we want peace. We want peace. And we know Haiti is being destabilized by gangs and stuff. So let's take a look at what's happening in Haiti. Hunger crisis deepens in Haiti. A UN declared famine hotspot. This is 6 days ago. Sad thing to see. Let's take a look at this here.
Extreme hunger is worsening in 13 global hotspots. A joint United Nations and World Food Programme report on Monday warned that places like Gaza, Sudan, and Haiti are at immediate risk of famine without urgent intervention. The Hunger Hotspots report blames conflict, economic shocks, and climate risks for hungrier crises in the hardest hit regions. A famine is declared when 20% of people face severe food shortages, 30% of children are malnourished, and 2 in 10,000 die daily from starvation or disease. Reuters was in Haiti, one of the places at immediate risk. Gang violence has displaced thousands here, with more than 8,000 people facing severe hunger, according to the report. Standing outside tents in the capital city of Port-au-Prince, local resident Schneider says hunger is ravaging the Haitian community, with many going all day without food. And he says there is no government support. While trying to find food to feed her children, Renette tells Reuters how serious the hunger crisis is for her.
The famine is hard in Port-au-Prince. I'm about to die. The kids are about to die. I have nobody. I have no one to call. Since this morning, I haven't given them anything yet. Where you see me sitting now, it's thanks to some neighbors. I will go and check to get something to cook, to feed them. But I don't see how because the famine is hard. The famine is hard. We're about to die.
The report predicts food crises in the next 5 months and said that aid delivery was being undermined by insecurity and funding gaps. A World Food Programme executive warned of that this was a red alert and said, quote, "Without funding and access, we cannot save lives."
Well, you need to farm your land. You see, when you farm your land instead of fighting over land, then you can save yourselves. All right? You need to discuss this with barbecue around the table. That's his name, barbecue. You know, discuss this and save Haitian lives within Haiti. I know you guys can do it. You are the first Black Republic. I know you guys can do it. It's going to take a lot of sweat and tears, but you guys can do it. You know, we know the history of Haiti. We feel for you, and we hope that people can live in peace and have a full stomach, right? You don't need to hunger yourselves. Just, you know, farm the land. That's all. That's all you need to do. Stop fighting. Farm the land. And you'll see that Haiti will prosper and grow again. All right? So that's another point of concern on our radar, and of course, we're going to show where Haiti is on the map so people have a good estimate. So here we go. Basically, an island split into two countries. You have Haiti and the Dominican Republic. The Dominican Republic is very, stable, prosperous and stuff. But on this side, yeah, it's one big hellhole, right? And it doesn't need to be. Farm the land, take care of each other, and be prosperous. That is what needs to be done, right? And other countries, there's no need for occupation of other countries. There are Jamaican people, Jamaica, Jamaican people in Port-au-Prince, right, fighting on another man's soil, right, because there are gangs that have power over there. No. Leave each other alone, right? If gangs want to be in power, why not? No? We have the Taliban in power in Afghanistan. You want to waste 20 years in this hellhole trying to stabilize, right? No. Let them be. Let them farm their land. Give seed and fertilizer and stuff so they can farm their land and live in peace. That's all. That's all that's needed, right? And if barbecue wants to be in power, you guys don't believe me, right? There's a guy in Haiti that calls himself Barbecue. So we're gonna take a look at that. Here we go. Here you have the Haitian gang leader. This is 1 year ago, and it was a hellhole back then, and it's still a hellhole now. So let's take a look at this guy here. And this guy used to be a cop.
He's not responsible for all the violence sweeping across Haiti's capital, but be under no doubt he's at the centre of it. His fighters are never far away.
Is this now all your territory? Because it was an open road when I was last here. Yeah.
Jimmy Cherizier, universally referred to here as Barbecue, one of the most powerful gangs in Port-au-Prince. But he's also the head of a gang consortium that's brought Haiti to its knees. He took us through the roadblocks of buses they've put in place to stop police raids on his territory. That territory now extends over one of the city's main roads, and economic high controls in its entirety.
Mais tout en l'air, quand on regarde le net, on s'excuse, monsieur. Tout quand on regarde le net, tout c'était étoile.
The bridge?
Yeah. On se passe là, nous passe là, nous gagnons tout devant.
If you really care for your population, you feed them, not give them weapons, right? So, it's a very complex situation over there. We feel for the Haitians. We don't want war. We want peace. Negotiations. Do whatever is needed to feed your population. They're starving. Right? You don't want this for your country. You want easy access to stuff, and you know, it's not that easy, right? It's not that easy, especially when you have like external powers. You know, Haiti has been conquered by external powers for decades and never really had their independence, even though way back when you guys had independence from France. And France gave you the bill, which, you know, you guys were still paying for it. Very sad thing to see, but it's true. So, we know our history, and we know that peace can only be achieved when you have dialogue, right? You need to talk to each other. That is what's needed. So, John Flickinger watched Jurassic Park. It was interesting, but yeah, not our soup, right? Let's take a look at this here. Iran retaliates in Qatar. We've seen the images already. I don't want this guy to talk, whoever he is. Let's see what else we got here. Why is Haiti so poor? Well, we just answered that question. There's also a very interesting documentary about Jerusalem, right? Jerusalem. Why is it a holy city? There you go. Let's see if we can find the documentary. It's here somewhere. Let's take a look elsewhere on Facebook. I believe I have posted it on my timeline. So here we go. Here's the timeline on Facebook. Let's see. Yep, I'm live. Here we have some comments. President Trump is stupid. Not very smart. Nostalgia with RHTVLive. Yeah, we show this here. This is also a very telling picture, right? We have countries bending over for Israel, and Iran says, nope, we're standing up. We're standing up against your empire, expansionist empire. So let's see where that documentary is of Jerusalem. The balcony of the free word, right? We're trying to build a consensus model in the Netherlands. This is also very telling. Let's see if we can. So that was a nice reel to watch, right? Let's see if we can find the documentary. Balcony of the Free Word again. We love you, Sarah. She had a concert. Very interesting country music. Let's see. Bigfoot Flog, also very interesting. Yeah. AI. Let's see. I place it somewhere, right? This is also an interesting channel to watch. You have this Iranian in England, I assume, right? Let's see. Nope, another RHTVLive. Let's see. Nope. I posted a lot on Facebook. Here we go. Use the force. There, you see? Use the force. Yeah, we can use the force of peace. That is what we need. We need peace. Now, where is that documentary? Maybe YouTube has, or Facebook has removed it. Who knows? We're still being censored here in the Netherlands. And yeah, I cannot find it. I guess we'll post it after the broadcast is done. Here we have it. The entire history of Jerusalem. Here we go. So let's go back into history, into the Middle East, and see how everything's played out.
Over places anywhere in the world, the city has been the prize of empires, kingdoms, and religious series, leading it to changing hands no fewer than 40 times. The repercussions which have been generated from these long-standing grievances continue to leave their mark on Jerusalem well into the 21st century. But how did this city, which began as little more than a settlement around a water spring, become one of the most religiously and politically contentious places on earth? This is how Jerusalem became the world's holiest city. You can now watch, as well as listen to all of our videos over on Spotify. Follow the link below to take This Is History with you whilst you're on the go. The earliest history of Jerusalem dates back to 3C, when the foundations of the settlement were first established near Gihon Spring. This major water source enabled Jerusalem's earliest inhabitants to transform what was otherwise a barren and arid landscape into what would one day become one of the most important cities in the world. By around 2000 BC, Jerusalem lay just beyond the borders of the Middle Egyptian kingdom. It was around this time that the first known written mention of the city, Jerusalem, was recorded in their documents. The city itself was occupied by a people known as the Canaanites, who had built a large stone wall around the settlement to protect its valuable water source. By 1500 BC, the city had come under the rule of the Egyptian New Kingdom as a vassal state, which stretched from the Sahara all the way to the borders of what is now Turkey. The power of the Egyptians began to decline by the 12th century BC, during a period of history known as the Late Bronze Age collapse. This era saw many of the empires and civilizations across the Eastern Mediterranean fall into rapid and often violent decline. In their wake arose many smaller independent kingdoms across the region, one of which was the Israelites, a faction of the Canaanites who, according to biblical tradition, were led by King David and came to occupy Jerusalem by 1000 BC, making it the capital of their new Kingdom of Israel. During the reign of David's successor, King Solomon, a grand temple, later known as, was constructed within the city, cementing its status as a major cultural and religious site for what would evolve into the Judaic religion. Within a century, however, the Kingdom of Israel had split in two, with the northern half remaining under its rule, whilst the southern half became the Kingdom of Judah, with Jerusalem as its capital. Over the next 400 years, Jerusalem developed as the epicenter of the Jewish faith and culture, although it faced frequent attacks by its more powerful neighbors, namely the Egyptian and Assyrian kingdoms, who were both vying for dominance across the region. Then, in the 6th century BC, Jerusalem experienced the first of what were pivotal transitions of power in its history. The successful Assyrian Empire in the region was the Babylonian Empire, led by King Nebuchadnezzar II. He sought to expand his territorial holdings and successfully besieged Jerusalem in 597 BC. Despite taking the city, the Babylonians faced significant resistance from the local Jewish population, which ultimately led to a rebellion just over a decade later, in 587 BC. In response, Nebuchadnezzar besieged Jerusalem once more, and destroyed much of the city, including Solomon's temple. This act of retribution was furthered by his order for the expulsion of the city's Jewish inhabitants, who were Babylonia in the east. Jerusalem remained part of the Babylonian Empire for the next 40 years, until it was absorbed by the rapidly expanding successor empire of the Achaemenids under King Cyrus the Great. Cyrus allowed many of the exiled Jews to return to Jerusalem and rebuild the city, including its temple. Over the following
the Achaemenid Empire came from the Persians, right? And that also had other kingdoms and stuff, you know, kings and queens, and yeah.
200 years, further waves of exiled Jews and their returns to Jerusalem. However, they still did not control the city for themselves. In 332 BC, possession of Jerusalem changed hands yet again, when Alexander the Great conquered it as part of his campaign against the Persian Empire.
So this is called the Hellenistic Empire, right? The first thing that Alexander the Great did was conquer Greece, because Macedonia is right above Greece, right? And Macedonia was bigger than it now is, because it's called North Macedonia. Why is it called North Macedonia? Well, because South Macedonia is in Greece, right? So here we have Greece, and right above it we have North Macedonia. So here you have North Macedonia. Basically, it used to be bigger, but Greece has annexed the whole region. So that's the Hellenistic Empire, and very interesting to see how many empires have come and gone. We also have the Ptolemaic Empire from Egypt. Ptolemy was a general of Alexander the Great and also got a piece of the empire.
Alexander's reign over the enormous empire that he carved out for himself was nevertheless short-lived, and following his death in 323 BC, it was divided up amongst his generals. Jerusalem initially fell under the control of the Ptolemaic dynasty in Egypt. However, following several centuries of almost constant warfare, it passed into the control of the Seleucids in 198 BC. Starting Alexander's reign and continuing under the subsequent Ptolemaic and Seleucid rule, many Jews within Jerusalem became adoptees of Greek culture. Although this shift away from traditional Judean practices eventually provoked unrest, which, during the 160s BC, erupted into rebellion, led by a Jewish group known as the Maccabees. They captured Jerusalem in 164 BC and restored Jewish the temple, an event still celebrated today in the Jewish festival of Hanukkah. Following what became known as the Maccabean Revolt, Jerusalem then became the capital of a semi-autonomous region within the wider Seleucid Empire, and later formed the center of the fully independent Hasmonean Kingdom, which lasted for well over a century. This period of independence, however, came to an end in 37 BC, following the rise of Herod the Great, who captured the city and established his reign as a client king of the Roman Republic. Nevertheless, within just 30 years of this, the Roman Republic went on to absorb the city of Jerusalem as part of the province of Judea, which it now governed under direct rule. The Romans were well known for their deployment of strategy and tactics in the ancient world. But if you have ever considered creating your own game-changing...
we don't need commercials. Go away, tacticus.
Population reached an estimated 70,000 to 100,000 people. The vast majority of these were Jewish. Yet a small but growing minority had become converts to a new sect of Judaism that had emerged within the city following the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus Christ,
which is Christianity. Now, the Romans said no to Christianity. They basically said, you're a terrorist, right? When you're a Christian, you're a terrorist. So they put them on the cross, just as they did with Jesus. And we're not really religious here at RHTVLive, right? But we know Jesus is a historical figure. He did exist. So there are enough records of that. Going back to Homer and the Greek philosophers, who talked about Palestine, right? So it's a very complex situation, but my estimate would be have the United States take control over Israel, right? And have the Russians take control over the Palestinian regions. This is how the US and Russia can cooperate instead of drawing borders, which they did with North and South Korea. So, yeah, Donald Trump, you better listen to me, right? Because you wanted to be the president of peace, and you intervened in Iran whilst Iran did not attack you, and now they are attacking the bases, and you guys drew the line within the Korean Peninsula. Russia and America drew the line. They made the demilitarized zone, right? I'm not making this up. So we're also going to show that. Let's see if we can find that. Demilitarized zone, Russia, America. Oh, it's America. There. Let's see if we can find. Nope. Nope. This is interesting, right? But why would President Trump attack not North Korea? It's on my mind. But why would they attack Iran for, maybe getting nuclear weapons while North Korea has nuclear weapons, and Donald Trump was shaking hands with the great leader Kim Jong-un. You know, it's very weird. Anyway, let's see if we can Korean war there. Did the U.S. win? The U.S. and Russia decided on the borders, even though we cannot really find it. It's pretty odd. We're not going to show the whole documentary. So, let's see. This is quite short. Yeah, why not?
And brutally to no end. They would each sacrifice supplies and lives to push the front mere miles in one direction or another, yet on July 27th, 1953, each side packed up and walked away from the same line. That's because, at 10 a.m. that day, the powers in charge sat down in Panmunjom and signed 18 copies of the Korean Armistice Treaty that, within 72 hours, the two sides would retreat 2 kilometers back from the mutually agreed upon demarcation line that roughly reflected the final state of the conflict. Still today, 70 years on, the two sides stand watch exactly where they finished their 2-kilometer walk back. The zone in the middle, now largely empty, is the notorious DMZ, the Demilitarized Zone. That name reflects the rules. Originally, only 1,000 personnel from each side were allowed within their half of the DMZ at a given time, and they were only allowed to carry small sidearms. These rules have drifted through time away from the letter of the armistice's law, but this is still one of the most high-stakes flashpoints globally, especially in 2024, so they still reflect their original intention. To prevent conflict, each side needs to make it abundantly clear to the other at all moments that they have no intentions of a military incursion, and the best way of doing this is staying far, far away from the line. Therefore, the intention of the DMZ is to act as a 4-kilometer wide zone of nothing. Each side controls access to the zone itself with heavily fortified fences and walls, yet within the DMZ there is no wall separating the two Koreas. Some spots have signs, yet for most of the 160-mile, 250-kilometer stretch, North and South Korea are separated by nothing but an invisible line through the forest. These days, it's...
Yeah, very interesting, but not... it's not saying who created the line, right? Let's see if we can find it on Google. Who created the DMZ line? There. Here we go. So it was the U.S. Army and the Russian Army. So you guys can do it, right? China, United States, North Korea, Russia is not even in this. Weird. Anyway, they were involved. So it shows you how much censorship there is. So there you have that, right? So you guys can do it. You guys can change the situation within the Middle East by having Russia as a protectorate of the Palestinian territories, right? I don't think anyone would disagree. So, I think we said enough for now. Thank you all for watching, and we'll see each other next time. But first, we're going to see if we can play a song, right? We need a song to liven up our, our thoughts. Let's see if we can find a song. We showed you Sarah Morgan. We love her. She was having a concert, and let's see what this here is. Let's put on some sound first, and we're going to close off with this here. That was a good song, Sarah. We love you. We love your husband, Chris, and stuff. We hope that you can play in the Netherlands sometime. So, thank you all for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe. And we'll see each other another time.